The small towns of Canada. The map of Canada, like the maps of most countries, is peppered with curious names. The names of towns and villages like Trois Pistoles, Moose Jaw, Kapuskasing, Long Sault. In this series, presented by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, we penetrate the reality behind some of these names and the reasons for the names themselves. On the map of Canada, Newfoundland, the Big Island, lies at the extreme right, across the entrance to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And on the map of Newfoundland, the hamlet of Heart's Content lies on the shore of one of the vast bays that bite into the eastern corner of this rugged island. Here is CBC broadcaster Doug Brophy to introduce you to the people, the sights and sounds of Heart's Content, Newfoundland.
The settlement is located about 38 miles, or roughly midway along the south shore of Trinity Bay. It is surrounded by hills on three sides, with Mizzen Hill at the back of the town rising to 600 feet. It has a fine, spacious harbor, almost circular in shape, and excellently protected from rough seas, with safe anchorage in over 30 fathoms of shoal-free water. The early growth and development of the settlement is not well documented. Records are scanty. Much of what is known of its early history has been passed down by word of mouth from generation to generation. But it is a matter of fact that the original settlers were industrious and skilled tradesmen who lost no time after they had settled to apply their talents to the difficult business of making a living in a new and difficult land.
As far as I know, Heart's Content is first named in the records in 1612, when John Guy mentioned it in the course of a voyage of discovery that he made in Conception and Trinity Bays. Guy was a Bristol man who came out to Newfoundland in 1611, remained for some 10 years or so in Newfoundland, and established the colony at Cupid's. The name Heart's Content seems to have been in existence before Guy recorded it. What it means, what its origin is doubtful. Some people think that it was probably the name of a ship, probably a pirate ship. Others think that it describes the circumstances of the anchorage, a safe, pleasant anchorage after stormy seas. The other interesting thing about the name is that there are other settlements nearby which also contain this element heart in them. We have Heart's Ease, which dates back to a similar period, and later Heart's Delight, Heart's Desire, Little Heart's Ease in some maps. The chances are that these other heart names acquired their designations by association with the original Heart's Content, I think.
That was Professor E.R. Seary, head of the English Department, Memorial University, St. John's, and president of the Canadian Linguistic Association. For the past few years, Dr. Seary has been doing research on Newfoundland place names. Now, here is Melvin Rowe, a former resident of Heart's Content, whose ancestors settled there in 1760.
As far as can be known, the community is not one of the oldest in Trinity South, and records say that it was first inhabited about 1660, mainly people of Irish extraction who came out from Waterford in Ireland around that year. First it began, like all other small settlements in Newfoundland, just a fishing community, but as the fishery progressed in Newfoundland, the building of ships began. The first dock, I would think, was built in Heart's Content around 1800. At that time it provided ships of all sorts and types. The shipbuilding reached its peak around 1840. I can well remember my grandmother telling me that at one time there were as many as 6 and 7 ships on the stocks, ready for launching in the spring. These ships were built for the merchants in St. John's, and in the spring of the year they went to the seal fishery, the cod fishery, and as well as to the Grand Banks fishery.
On the 27th of July, 1866, Heart's Content leaped into world prominence. For the 10 preceding years, technicians were working on a system of communication that most people thought impossible. The best men on both sides of the Atlantic were involved in a plan to link east and west by a copper cable laid on the floor of the ocean. Fortunes had been gambled and lost. But on July 27, 1866, the project was successfully completed. One of man's most dramatic and ambitious scientific and engineering feats had been achieved, and Heart's Content, because of its favorable geographic location, was forever written into history. A few brief sentences on a monument in Heart's Content records that milestone in communications.
To commemorate the landing of the first Atlantic cable, 1856-1858. On August the 5th, 1858, the USS Niagara landed the first Atlantic cable at Bay Bull's Arm near this place. Inaugural messages were exchanged by Queen Victoria and President James Buchanan, but shortly thereafter, this cable failed. On July 27, 1866, having surmounted great difficulties, an improved cable was laid between Valentia, Ireland, and Heart's Content, Newfoundland, by the SS Great Eastern.
The cable office soon became the most important economic asset in the community. It has remained so to the present day. In 1915, the settlement enjoyed a fillip which, although short-lived, provided additional income to the people in Heart's Content and adjacent places. As it was in 1866, so it was in 1915. The community owed its good fortune to its fine natural harbor. The fact is recorded now by 2 former cable operators, Mr. H.R. Rendell and Melvin Rowe.
Around 1915, the Trinity South branch line was laid to Heart's Content. This in itself gave much needed employment in the 200s of people in Heart's Content and the surrounding communities. Being a Admiralty port, this one of the finest in the world, this port was rarely icebound.
Around 1915, the A&D Company, knowing that the Newfoundland Railway had built a branch line from Whitburn to Heart's Content, decided to make the community a winter shipping port for his newsprint to the United Kingdom. The first shipment of newsprint left Heart's Content in 1917. It was also used as a storing depot for the Newfoundland Railway Company, as whom we know today as the Canadian National Railways. At one time, I would think there was about as much as 15 to 30,000 tons of coal stored there each year, and it was a holding ground for supplying steamship service, railways, and various other things.
Heart's Content was at one time the largest Anglican community outside St. John's. Here in 1862, Reverend George Gardner founded the Heart's Content Fishermen's Society, which in 1872 developed into the Society of United Fishermen, an important fraternal society with branches throughout the country and a few in eastern Canada. In successive periods, 3 churches once stood where the present church of St. Mary the Virgin now occupies a commanding view of the settlement. The cornerstone was laid more than 80 years ago to make it perhaps the oldest building in the community. There is much evidence throughout the church of the loyalty and devotion of the laity. Many artistic works by local parishioners adorn the nave and sanctuary. Reverend H.M. Batten is the rector and rural dean of Trinity Conception.
Now, if you would look here at the pulpit, that's a very fine piece of work done by a local parishioner. It is said that the lumber was sawn from the mast of a fishing schooner. We have several marble tablets on the walls. They are in memory of those who go down to the sea in ships. Ernest Rockwood lost from the schooner Ethel on the Grand Banks, 1903. 5 others commemorated in another tablet lost their lives in the wreck of the E.B. Phillips, 1892. They're all a sturdy, reliant, independent people of good British ancestry and live honest lives of work and worship. They can ply their own trades, build their own homes and boats. In fact, they are doing that at this very moment. They get their own wood and lumber out of the woods, and they plant their own gardens. They help their neighbors in all times of stress and strain. They provide their own church school for the education of their children, and their halls for their fraternal organizations and times of fellowship. How can one doubt or lose faith with men such as this?
Not unlike many communities of similar size in Newfoundland, educational opportunities and teaching facilities have often been limited. But a dedicated group of teachers have served Heart's Content well down through the years, and the town has every reason to be proud of its scholastic record. Some of Newfoundland's leading business and professional men received their early education there. Cyril Bull has been principal of St. Mary's Anglican School for the past 12 years. He supervises 144 students and 4 teachers.
As you see, sir, this is a new school, 4 years old. We have all modern conveniences, central heating, running water, and so on. We have 4 teachers and do all the work from grades 1 to grade 11. Our present enrollment is 144. In grades 1 up to grade 8, the curriculum is followed pretty much as in all other schools, but in the 9, 10, and 11, we do follow on all the courses which lead to matriculation. And that includes such subjects as Latin and English and mathematics and general science. You note, sir, I said general science because we have neither the time nor the facilities to do physics and chemistry.
If I graduate this year, I intend to take up the teaching profession, and in a couple of years I hope to attend a university.
If I graduate this summer, I plan to go to university in the fall, and finally to take up teaching as a career. I would like to teach here in Newfoundland if possible.
If I am successful in the coming examinations, I hope to take commercial courses in St. John's and then go on to stenographer work probably in the civil service.
On completion of my grade 11, I would like to take up the teaching profession and teach in the northern parts of Newfoundland. After a couple of years, I would like to go to university, further my education.
If I'm successful in the coming exams, I plan to enter college next year for an arts course.
Teaching, the civil service, and the arts. Young Heart's Content has set its sights high. But they realize they will have to leave home and find their futures elsewhere, as so many others have done before them. From a peak of 1,200, the population has declined now to half that. Today, only about 30 fishermen fish for cod and lobster. There is no agriculture and no industry. As one senior citizen put it, unless something comes along, I'm afraid things will remain pretty much the same. Maybe, but who can tell? In 1866, Heart's Content was the important link in the first east-west telegraphic communication. Who knows what the future may hold for this quiet, little, peaceful, picturesque settlement down by the sea.
That was Doug Brophy of the CBC. This is part of the series, The Small Towns of Canada, presented by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation through its international service.